Welcome to the Steering Change Podcast, navigating through the commercial transportation industry in Alberta and beyond, powered by the Alberta Motor Transport Association. Here's your host, Kelsey Hipkin.
Hello, listeners of Steering Change. 'Tis I, your host, Kelsey Hipkin. You're about to listen to a conversation that every light-duty commercial carrier in Alberta needs to hear. Don't know whether or not you're a light-duty commercial carrier? This will be some essential listening, my friends. For a second, let's hop in our time machine and go back about 5 years when AMTA had conversations with Edmonton Police Services about ticketing commercial drivers. Traditionally, drivers would option 1, plead guilty and pay a ticket, option 2, plead guilty and go to court for ticket reduction, or option 3, plead innocence and go to court. Edmonton Police Service recognized and discussed a new option, however, option 4, that would allow drivers to be educated in their compliance to prevent future pullovers and a potential cancellation of their ticket. What was formerly known as option 4 has become AMTA's newly released light-duty carrier compliance course, in which drivers of mid-sized commercial vehicles now have a clearer path to understanding the rules, improving safety, and protecting everyone on the road. In today's episode, we'll break down what the course covers, why it matters, and how it connects to commercial vehicle-related tickets, especially for those driving non-NSC vehicles. And while completing the course doesn't guarantee a ticket cancellation, it does give drivers the knowledge they need to operate responsibly. If you were one of the 100 or so attendees at our April 1st Calgary Regional meeting, you'll be familiar with today's guests. We're joined by two outstanding safety leaders who have seen firsthand the challenges and best practices shaping fleets across Alberta today. As well, we're joined by two of AMTA's own experienced Class 1 drivers and subject matter experts, and together we'll explore what compliance really looks like when it comes to light duty. I would like to welcome today's guests. We have Nicole Carrier, Fleet Manager with South Country Co-op, Jake House, Compliance Business Partner with Ledcor, Cliff Litke, Senior Advisor, Member Services with AMTA, and you know him, you love him, Josh Hannaberry, Senior Advisor, Strategic Partnerships with AMTA. Nicole, Jake, Cliff, Josh, welcome.
Thank you.
We'll start with an easy one, you guys. We'll do some get-to-know-yous. Nicole, if you could please tell us a bit about your work with South Country Co-op.
I came to South Country Co-op in 2018 as fleet manager here. South Country Co-op started off as some fairly small local co-ops, and as they amalgamated, it's brought them into the larger company they are today. So we've got a fleet of about 130 different moving pieces between trucks and trailers, light duty and heavy duty, happening in our fleet. So it makes for interesting times when you've got a local shop that maybe had 5 people and 2 trucks. And now all of a sudden, because we do have some units that cross the border into Saskatchewan, all of a sudden everybody is under federal regulations. So it's been a bit of a learning curve since I came, but it's a good company and good people that are really want to try and do things properly.
Awesome, and thank you for joining us today, Nicole. Now, Jake, could you tell us a bit about your work with Ledcor?
Yeah, thanks, Kelsey. So for me, I focus on the National Safety Code in the Department of Transportation for all of our fleets. A lot of that entails to auditing. So we focus on driver files and qualification, hours of service records, vehicle files. We have, it keeps growing every single day. I want to say about 15 carriers now. That's in Canada and the US. So a lot of travel, a lot of different regulations that we focus on to continue to grow our business. And I've been doing this now for 5 years, coming up on May the 17th, actually. So it's been a long ride, a lot of growing, and really happy to be a part of it all.
Awesome. Thank you, Jake. Now, Mr. Litke, please tell us a bit about your history and industry and the work you do with AMTA.
Actually, it's kind of started out very similar to most guys my age that are in the industry. Is my dad was a truck driver, and my dad was my hero. So started from like when I was really young, I just wanted to be like my dad. So be careful what you wish for. I was 18 years old when I started working at his trucking company, or he was a manager of a trucking company. Started working there in summers. Yeah, I was loading trailers, swamping, and picking orders and that kind of stuff. And that was back in the late 80s when things were quite lax compared to today. And for the next couple of years after that, I ended up being actually driving truck for light duty, which is kind of funny, ironic. I got my license, Class 1, I think I was about 21 years old. And that was 1991. I think I got my
Oh,
class
dating
one.
yourself over there.
Yeah, right. Feel old already. And so it's from 91 till 2000. I drove tractor trailer in the city of Edmonton as a city P&D application. And then in late 99, I started going to school and took business and came out with a business diploma and was in sales for commercial transportation like Canadian Freightways, Day and Ross, Clark Transport. That was for about 10 years. So in 2010, I was a terminal manager for a small carrier. And so I was an LCV instructor, I was a PDIC instructor, I was a TDG instructor. I was a driver trainer, janitor, mechanic, pretty much anything that needed to get done. I'd have to do it. And I learned a lot in that role, and which led me to AMTA in May of 2019. So that's 37 years in the industry. I feel old now.
It's been a minute.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Cliff. And Mr. Hannaberry, tell us a bit about the work that you do as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And Cliff, I was going to say, you don't even look a day older than 37. So you started
right.
really young.
Yeah.
So at AMTA, I'm our senior advisor of strategic partnerships. And before I dive into my role, I think I'm still self-proclaimed AMTA's #1 fan. Spent a lot of time celebrating the work we do. Kelsey, who's next to me, and Robin in the back end, you do an amazing job as well on this podcast. But yeah, I'm super proud husband and dad. And I know that's a big part of my identity that helps me really serve our industry through AMTA. So I'm really fortunate in my role as our senior advisor of strategic partnerships to spend a lot of time with high quality people like Cliff, Kelsey, Jake, and Nicole, who we're going to have a good conversation with today, really just understanding what are they up against and how do we help. And I think that's the biggest gift that any association that does it right does is we're here to help. We bring a lot of value. A lot of times that's listening. That's being curious, and then, collaborating with experts like Jake and Nicole to come up with solutions. So I spent a lot of time doing that, partnering with various organizations, and spending a lot of time, making a difference, I'd say, on road safety and within organizations within our industry.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Josh. And again, thank you all for being here. Let's start at the beginning. The reason that we're here today, light duty carrier compliance. Cliff, I'm going to start with you. Can you tell us about a name some folks might be aware of, option 4, and how that turned into the light duty carrier compliance that we see today?
Sure, you bet. I was approached about 4 or 5 years ago by Dave Beatty. He's a sergeant for the Edmonton Police Service Commercial Vehicle Enforcement Division, because he had an idea of creating a course dedicated to light duty commercial vehicle drivers. And when we say light duty, it's between 4,500 and 11,793 kgs, non-national safety code trucks. There's no formal training for these drivers for these kinds of commercial vehicles, and his team was constantly writing tickets for the same things, like cargo securement, improper registration, insufficient decaling on the sides of the trucks, no driver vehicle inspections or pre-trips. And what almost all these people getting ticketed had in common was they didn't know that they had to follow some of the same rules that a fully trained NSC driver does, though. So with there being no formal training, Dave wanted to come up with another option of educating the drivers as opposed to strict enforcement. Mm-hmm. So when you get a ticket, there are 3 options. So the first option is you plead guilty and just pay the fine. Second option is plead guilty and go to court to try to get the fine reduced. And then the third is to plead not guilty and just go to court. So Dave created the 4th option, and that was to attend this course to get the tickets removed, hence the name option 4. This went on for about 2 years with great success. I mean, it even garnered some federal recognition in Ottawa. Dave had to go down there to receive a federal award for his option 4 course. And Dave's bosses decided that they needed an exit strategy because EPS, they're enforcement, they're not teachers. So he reached out to me and see if we could take it over. So 1 year later, we're now have a self-directed online course. It's called Light Duty Carrier Compliance.
I'm going to throw to you, Josh. Can you kind of touch on how important is it that industry and vis-a-vis AMTA has a relationship like it does with law enforcement, that someone like a Dave Beatty is able to come to us and say, hey, this might be a really good idea?
I think it's critical. Cliff, being a former professional driver, myself included, we know what it's like to get inspected. And even though you don't feel like they're against you as an enforcement, you forget the human element. And I think that's the critical part that AMTA brings to the relationship, is we humanize law enforcement officer. We really do a good job celebrating the profession that they have and the expertise that they have. And then we can work together to help industry problems. Cliff actually showed me that when I first got involved with AMTA when I was still at a large carrier.
Well, that's a great point you make there, because at our regional meetings and all of our conferences, enforcement is always in attendance, and like you said, the real people come out. When they're on the street, they've got to be the tough guy, but when they're in a setting like a regional meeting or the conference, people they actually come across as very approachable. And they want to educate. They don't want to enforce. So they would rather teach us the way that's supposed to be done instead, as opposed to writing a ticket. Yeah. So no, I really value the relationship that we have with all law enforcement.
Absolutely. And speaking of teaching, speaking of education, Josh, I'm going to let you take over and delve into that world with Nicole and Jake.
Awesome. No, I appreciate that. And Cliff, yeah, I really celebrate that. And I mean what I said. So Cliff's been a cornerstone in my journey prior to working at AMTA and as colleagues and good friends. So he's taught me a lot. So thank you for that. So Jake, I'm going to start with you, my friend. So since you have a large fleet of a good mix of commercial vehicles being utilized in your operations across North America, how do you communicate to the different business leaders like utilities or oil and gas of the different requirements that the commercial vehicles have? And do they ever try to challenge you with these requirements, since they're not more commonly known as, say, a commercial vehicle like a tractor trailer?
For me, it starts off with understanding the business first. I think it's learning about where are they operating. Are they solely within a province? Are they crossing borders? What does that look like? How many units do they have? Is it things like tractor trailers, did you say? Is it mostly light duties? Understanding what I'm going to be dealing with on a day-to-day basis. What are they hauling? Does TDG come into play? And then how many people do they have? Is it a small team? Is it a big team? Really understanding the business so I can be effective day to day. And then second is developing relationships with the people that you're working with. I think that is humongous when it comes to dealing with regulations and enforcement and making sure we're following the rules. I think to be able to understand and know how to be effective, know how to communicate with people that's going to help support them as much as possible is humongously important in dealing with day-to-day with them. Is it going on site and dealing with them directly? Is it phone calls, asking questions? Josh, I think you said it earlier, be curious, understand where the gaps are and how you can be effective. Something that we always look towards as a group is developing a partnership with the individual BUs that you're working with. I think there's so many times, and we talk about enforcement, when we come, and especially as auditors, we're seen as, oh, we're going to come and cause trouble and point out all the issues and say, here's what you need to deal with and walk away. And for me, like I really see that and take it personally, because I work for you, the same team, I get paid by the same person. And for me, when I go in, I want to meet my people. I want to understand where the issues are. I really want to help, and I'm not going to go anywhere until the problem's solved. And that's the really important thing about communicating these, because you're seeing us supporting the business versus just enforcement. And yeah, there's always going to be issues. I think with anything, everyone's just going to assume, as to your point, Josh, it's tractor trailers. If it's not the big 18-wheeler that you see going down the highway, they just go, well, I don't have any of those. Why do I have to do this? And again, it goes back to just developing those relationships, being transparent with the people you're working with so they understand the why and why they need to do it and why it's important.
Such a powerful statement. So Jake, I have a lot of respect for you, my friend. And when I remember when I first met Jake, big shout out to Christine as well, his leader, who she said something about him, and that when you're listening, as you listen under a conversation, you know what he sees. He really cares, and use some key language. So team, partner, let's solve problems. And I believe that's the right approach. So I applaud that. And I'm glad that you're on our podcast right now, my friend. So I know you're all over the place, but within your different business units, do you have some that are registered as a provincial carrier and others that are federal? And can you give us a quick rundown, if so, just on what's the difference?
Yeah, so we have both. To explain the difference, I'll keep it within Alberta. So provincial carriers, meaning you're operating solely within the province, that starts at 11,794 kgs or more. Again, staying within the province. And then federal, meaning crossing borders, that threshold is 4,501 kgs or more. So you can see right away there's a significant difference in weight threshold, which is really going to change how big your fleet are and how many regulated drivers you're going to have. And I cannot emphasize the importance enough. Even if one vehicle goes over the border, that changes everything for your fleet and promotes the risk of audits coming in and records looking at. So please, 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 when you're listening to this and maybe starting brand new or you're working through this as a carrier, always, always, always make sure your drivers understand the difference between the two.
Yeah, it's a really good statement. And thank you for the good definition too, because it's interesting where an F-350, if you look at the VIN plate and you look at the registration, pretty certain they're over that 4,501 kg. So just being really mindful of that. I appreciate it. Thank you, Jake. So Nicole, I'm going to pivot to you quick. So you mentioned earlier in your introduction just the difference once you realize that, oh, wait, hold on, there's some things here that are federal. So can you kind of dig into your operation from a federal and provincial stance, if there's any, and what are some of the challenges that you've seen running a light duty commercial fleet because of the operating status, and maybe the company leaders weren't aware of this?
I think part of the biggest challenge that we've had here is for both management as well as drivers and staff understanding what being a commercial driver means. So you have some non-traditional driver roles. You have agronomists, you have facility assistants, you have grow team advisors, and you do have some of our managers that if they want to use the 1-ton flat deck to take some product to their customer, they're now going to be a commercial driver. There's also been some questions about some of our seasonal folks who needs logbooks. How often do they need logbooks? And making sure everybody understands if you are on the driver's list, you need to have a logbook for every day, not just the days you drive. We have a large portion of our busiest season is in the spring, and we have seasonal workers. I was oil field before co-op, but when I came to the co-op, that was one of the things that really was a huge difference. Was the first hire package I had for some folks that are in their late 70s, early 80s, retired farmers that are coming to just drive for a couple of weeks for us. So teaching the younger generation how to use an app on their phone to deal with ELDs and all of the trucks, because we're federal, you can get them on board. It's how do you teach someone who's in their late 70s how to download an app on an iPhone and how to connect to the ELD in the truck, and also understanding that everybody knows, you know what, you need to be connected, and this is because we are federal. Part of it has been communication for sure, making sure, like Josh referenced, and Jake referenced, and Cliff, some of it is the people you work with that are, they're educating you and they're educating the people with them. Communication is huge, and consistent communication. You need to make sure that you are setting the expectation from day one with both your management as well as your drivers. Here's what the expectations are. And then you need to follow up on that. You need to make sure that if you say, call me with any questions, that you're going to have the time to answer those questions. And I do think a lot of the success that we have here at the co-op is because of the relationships that we forge with the drivers when they first come in. Just talking about, okay, some of these drivers have never had any sort of commercial training. They're coming in with a Class 5 license. Maybe they're just driving a truck and a trailer. Now, perhaps they've been hauling livestock for 5 years. And I mean, livestock is a heck of a lot more challenging than just some fence posts on a truck, but making sure they understand, here's what the requirements are. Farmers have exemptions from some of the regulations. So making sure when they come in and it's a co-op truck and it's federally regulated, here's what the requirements are. And a lot of that is training and making sure they understand. You don't need to have everything memorized. You just need to know who to call in the company or where to look it up. And I know I've referenced this before. A lot of the questions that I've had over the years with situations that I'm like, I'm not sure how to handle this. The AMTA has been a huge resource, as well as some of the people I know in enforcement, because when you're not sure what to do and people are looking to you for the answer, there's a lot of pressure. And that's one of the things with the light duty driver training. I know there's a lot of questions that have come up with how does this apply? And it's making sure that you can explain it in a way that's also relative to their experience level. How does it directly apply to them? How does it apply to our actual operations?
Powerful. Thank you, Nicole. Yeah, I like to compliment people. I think that's important. And Nicole, I remember when we first met too through AMTA, and same. I'll give you a similar compliment that I gave to Jake, is that when you're an expert and you really care, I think that's when impact is created, because there's a lot of hidden components in this space between the 4501 to 11793 kg, where if you didn't really care, you kind of shrug your shoulders. It's their ticket. It's their problem. But when you really care, like Nicole cares, which I really honor, I think that's when you can really make a difference. And so it's funny when you're talking about the younger generation versus more of the aged, where you have to download the app and you have to sync it to the ELD and you have to make sure it's actually connected. And I remember the first time that I was that person. I got to help a mix of culture and age when ELDs became a legal requirement. And our oldest guy that I got to train smashed his flip phone down on the dash and said, "I own a VCRU," and then he said a bad word, "and you want me to use this thing?" And he's pointing at his tablet. So I could imagine the conversations are joyful. So, but I appreciate that. And another word that you really hit on is communication. And when you say, if you have a question, call me, making sure you have time and capacity to answer the phone. So that way, your team feels supported and you can actually walk them through different challenges is another thing that I know you do very well. So I do appreciate that. So when you think about the hidden compliance requirements, is there any examples that you can share? Even the one that you mentioned from farming to going to co-op, but is there any hidden within the light duty the light duty commercial that you could hit on?
Part of it comes down to the drivers when they first come through the door, is having them understand what it means to be a professional driver. You're taking on a greater liability and responsibility for your actions, and understanding what that means, understanding what your company should be doing for their requirements and responsibilities to you. What does it mean to be fit for duty? Part of it, definitely cargo securement, trip inspection. We have a lot of drivers when they come to us that, if they walk around the vehicle and 4 tires look good, okay, we're good to go. So making sure they understand that all of these requirements, even though you don't have the big truck in front of you and you don't necessarily have air brakes on some of this stuff, you still need to make sure that everything's working, and that it's every single day. It's not just when you're fully loaded. It's not just when enforcement is on the road. It's every single day, every single trip. I also should add too that part of it was ensuring that management understood. Part one is the drivers, but part two is understanding with management that, if your agronomists and your grow team advisors want to be taking chemical out to their customers, we're going to have to pay for their training as a commercial driver. They're now going to be logbooks. We're going to be monitoring their hours and whatnot. So, cycles and hours recaps. It's also making sure we're all aware of what our operations need to be and the impact it can have. Those are some of the questions, right? So.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, leadership buy-in is critical. And I think to be effective like you are, you need to be able to clearly explain it, because you're talking a different language. When you're an operational leader who's thinking about the numbers and the customers and the 5-year vision of an organization versus if your boots on the ground focus on just what's right in front of you, you have to be able to articulate just why this matters in a different way. So I think you did a really good job explaining that. And shout out to you and Jake when you joined our regional meeting earlier a couple weeks ago prior to this recording too. Just there's a lot of senior leaders in the room, and I was watching the heads go up and down like mine do, to a point where you get dizzy because you're in agreement. So I appreciate that knowledge. Thank you. So I'm going to segue quickly, Nicole, more into training. So when you're hiring and onboarding the light duty commercial drivers, what does the onboarding look like and how long does it normally take?
I have the luxury at the co-op. I'm focusing just on transportation compliance. So when we're talking some of the actual HSE orientation, that's a bit separate. But anyone who's going to be a commercial driver for us actually goes for an independent driver evaluation. That's pre-hire, making sure that they can do the job. And before they actually go out and are driving, they come in here at the corporate office for 8 hours with me, bare minimum. It's an 8-hour day. So we go over hours of service, fatigue management, trip inspection, load securement, but we also do a lot of other things. We talk about defensive driving. We talk about distracted driving, aggressive driving. We talk about liability. We talk about responsibilities. Jake had mentioned at the AMTA regional meeting, and I actually found it really interesting, Jake, because one of the things I include in every single class I teach, whether it's commercial drivers or management or light duty drivers, I talk about Humboldt. And I talk about the fact that there is no major smoking gun that caused that incident. If you take a look, there were small decisions made. And there was no one terribly wrong decision that was made. And that's something trying to impress upon people. Your number one job is to get home safe and take your time. Take your time and understand that, you know what, when you get behind the wheel, you're taking responsibility for everything that happens. So if you're unsure about something, speak up. Making sure that we give these people the opportunity, especially some of the young ones that don't realize what that means, right? So every truck comes with a truck binder with a lot of information in there on cargo securement, on TDG, on hours of service, because let's face it, if you're in this industry, you understand you could spend a week with folks and still not run out of things to go over. They'd stop listening a lot sooner than you'd stop talking. So part of it is trying to condense that much information into that 8-hour day. But I truly believe, and I actually, my management here believes as well, our executive team, the relationships that are forged during that 8 hours are what creates a successful system across so many different locations, because you may not remember everything that we've discussed, but you're that much more comfortable calling later on with questions or texting me to give me a heads up that, hey, I just got pulled over in Tabor for CBSA. Everything went well, but I just wanted to let you know. Just that open line of communication, both good and bad, is incredibly important for the system to be successful.
Oh, another powerful statement. Totally agreed with you. The opportunity to really protect your business, protect your people that are on the ground by really empowering that through that orientation is critical. So thank you for sharing that. I think that's a huge takeaway for our audience today too. Thank you for that, Nicole. So Jake, I'm going to pivot to you now. So knowing you have sites across North America, and how does you and your team handle the different training and compliance requirements for, say, pipeline crews or utility crews who aren't necessarily commercial drivers for their job per se, but they do operate a commercial vehicle as part of their job?
But I think it goes back to my point about understanding the business. I think Alberta, really any province and the States as well, there's so many different regulations. They change province by province, state by state. There's exemptions that come into play. So really, to understand the business, what they're going to be driving, what they're going to be hauling, to make the training as specific as possible to what the drivers are going to see on a day-to-day basis is really going to make it easier to adopt as a driver and as a BU entirely. Because if you make it generic or you cover everything, and the National Safety Code is a monster in itself, and you have stuff that doesn't apply to them, it's just going to go in one ear and out the other. To make it with your vehicle, same deal. What are they going to be driving? So you're seeing real life examples of what they're going to see in the field. And then the other thing too is, and Nicole just touched on it, understand the why. Every single training video that we have for the National Safety Code and Department of Transportation ties back to either Humboldt or ties back to a real world industry or even our own company incidents of why it's so important to follow the rules that we're following and what happens after. There's fines. I mean, Humboldt, everybody knows what happened there and the devastation that it occurred across the country, across the world. Makes it that much more effective for them to understand why. But that being said, there's some challenge that comes with training. You can't just expect drivers to understand it after one day. I know even myself starting 5 years ago, it took time. And even still to this day, I'm continuing to grow. There's always changes that are happening. So to Nicole's point, when you're going through these trainings, understand where the resources are that they can fall back onto, where they can go to. Having leadership a part of this as well. They've got to understand expectations of what's expected of all their guys too, because it's got to start from the top down. If they don't know what's going on, the drivers aren't going to probably worry about it either. So those things are important. And then with that as well, with training, have testing. Understand, are they retaining the material that they're training? Then you can see, is there any gaps? And then me as a team, maybe I can go back and say, how do I change what I'm producing and sending to them and presenting to them to be more effective? And then also another thing is auditing, maybe mini audits come into play. Do we be proactive and look at, is there gaps? Is there incidents that we can mitigate moving forward to be more successful as a business?
It's powerful. Thank you for that. A couple of things that you said, and I liked how you tied it in, is it does come from the top down. And when a professional driver will watch their supervisor, and a professional driver, I know that's maybe not tractor trailer, we're talking late commercial, but if they watch their supervisor do exactly what Jake said not to do, what do you think they're going to do? What the supervisor just did. So I think, yeah, that's a huge point, and really digging into the why. And I agree with you. I like the testing part. I don't really like tests, to be fully transparent, but it does help your team from a compliance lens where if, okay, everyone's getting questions 7 and 9 wrong, maybe we're not teaching the information thoroughly enough. So yeah, I think that's a good self-reflection too. I appreciate that, Jake. So Cliff, I'm going to pivot to you now, my friend. And when I liked how you explained what you and Dave Beatty did for option 4. So can you share some of the examples during the option 4 for non-compliance that the people took, and if the training that exists today could have helped prevent it?
Yeah, sure. There's so many. Wow. Really, in the classes that I attended, very few of the attendees knew of the 3 things that every commercial truck registered over 4,500 kgs requires on both sides of the vehicle. I mean, all of us here know that you need the tear weight, the GVW, and the name or a logo on the side of both sides of the vehicle. Even today, or any day, anytime I'm driving, I'm always on I just kind of see it now. And almost every commercial truck, welder, landscaper doesn't have any of that. So I mean, it's out there, and we just got to get the education out, and we just need to people to get on board. Almost none of the attendees knew anything about load securement. That's probably one of the biggest ones in the class that people got fines for. A good portion of the course went over load securement. Like almost half of the time, the 3-hour course was spent on load securement, just because there's a lot to it, and there's math involved. So a lot of people's eyes glazed over during the class, and I could tell that a lot of it just went over their heads. So the nice thing about the AMT light duty compliance course is that they're going to be able to go back and really learn it at their own pace, right? They don't have the Edmonton police officer at the front of the class rifling through a bunch of numbers and the whiteboard and drawing out, how many straps you need for 10 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet, et cetera, that kind of stuff. So they can really learn it at their own pace with our course. Now, driver vehicle inspections, pre-trips. Another big item that light duty drivers miss. Nicole touched on this. They don't need to record it, but they actually have to do them. At commercial inspection points, enforcement officers routinely find things that would easily be found if the driver knew what to look for, not to mention that they actually need to know they have to do it. So those are just the 3 big ones. I could go on for an hour if you wanted me to, but
no, I think that's so important. What about, you told me a funny story about something that was blue that I laughed because I didn't even know that was a requirement, and then it wasn't a requirement with the bungee cord.
Oh, the bungee cord, yeah. Yeah, we when at the beginning of every one of the EPS option 4 courses, I would get up, or myself or Chad or whoever was there for AMTA would get up and introduce AMTA, and I gave out swag, but I also asked 3 questions to the attendees just to see what kind of level of knowledge is out there. And one of the questions I would ask was, what color of bungee cord are you able to use as a primary means of load securement? And a lot of guys were just like a black or a gray or white. I'm like, no. Actually, there was a short period of time that you could use a blue bungee cord, but that was a very short period of time because it actually had a working load limit on it. But they ended up getting that removed very quickly because, of course, it's a bungee cord. So
what I think is funny is that's the experience in the room, respectfully, of course.
Yep.
But because we all see bungee cords, but I didn't know that about the blue at that one point. And I was just like, no way. So, but yeah, thanks for sharing that. So you hit on AMTA's course. So I know it's just recently launched. So huge props to our education team for the hard work that went into that, and yourself too, Cliff. I know you were a main contributor for it. So how does industry get a hold of that course to take it?
Well, they go on our website. It's on our website now as of last week. I know it took a little longer to get out than we really wanted because we had to get the Crown involved to make sure that there was a formal process to get the tickets expunged when you were done the course. So that took a little bit longer. So now I had a wait list of about a dozen people that wanted to take the course. So as soon as it became live, I got on the horn and called all the people on the wait list so they could take the course. And from what I understand, like I said, it became live last week, and we've got a whole bunch of hits already on it. So yeah, to find the course, just go on our website under education, and it's very easy to find. Just one click, and you'll have to set up a biz account. Which anybody that goes on there will find it'll be easy, and be able to take it. As a matter of fact, I'm taking it right now. I'm halfway through it.
That's awesome. So if you can pass it, anyone can.
And I haven't failed, so I'm happy.
Quick shout out to our listeners. We will also make sure that link is in the show notes for you, so you can access that. Take a little shortcut. Gold.
Well done, team. Love that.
Just for you.
I appreciate that. And Cliff, I meant when I said, if you can pass it, I can pass it. So I'm going to take it now too. That's good. Just joking. No, that's awesome. All right, so I'm going to segue a little bit. So I've been spending some time learning more about the efforts being made to operate compliant light-duty commercial vehicles and operators who don't necessarily identify as a commercial driver. So it usually takes a scenario to occur, so something hard. So for me, it was interesting during the regional meeting, the auditor that taught me what I'm about to share was there. So it's nice to give him a big shout out. So Frank, a really good guy. So huge shout out to Frank. But I learned through an audit that the front person, like our front counter admin, was not allowed to take our F-350 to go grab lunch for our team unless they were deemed qualified and trained. So that was a big, and also that was an expensive learning moment for my former organization. So Jake, I'm going to ask you a same question then, or I'm going to ask you this as a question, is can you share any recent examples of where non-compliance occurred and that sparked a change in how your company monitors compliance?
Yeah, for sure. So just to provide a little bit of background, this was for one of our carriers in British Columbia. And for the listeners, for anybody that doesn't know, the National Safety Code starts at 5,001 kgs or more in BC. And in BC, there's several exemptions. The big exemptions are hours of service and trip inspections for light-duty vehicles between 5,001 and 11,793. So for all of our light-duty vehicles, things like those, they're not going to be documented. But in this particular instance, we had a drive across the border into the Northwest Territories. And as I explained earlier, when you cross over the border, your weight threshold drops down to that 4501. And all those lovely exemptions that we have in play in BC are gone. So what happened? We had a driver get pulled into a weigh scale. And as you can expect, the officer came by and says, well, where's this, this, and this, which led to a pretty big ticket. We took it back. And first of all, as a team, we got the news, and for me and my team, we looked at our training as a whole. Are we covering what we need to cover? Is the importance of explaining provincial versus federal being covered and the repercussions that follow if we don't? So check that box and make sure we're covered on that. And then again, explaining to the business why it's so important to make sure we're following, because they're a provincial carrier. They blew it right there, not only on missing the trip inspections and the hours of service and a couple other things, but they're breaking the rules already on that. And what that can lead to, things like external audits. The BC government could come calling any day to look at, hey, what happened here? And what's the other aspects of your business doing? So that's a lot of things. And the fines that can come from that are huge. And we have a lot of other businesses, again, within BC. They could look and see what's going on there too. So what came from that? We have what's called the compliance alerts. And what a compliance alert is for us, we share really what happened and why it happened, the repercussions of what happened, fines, whatever happened, audits, and how to fix it moving forward. And we don't just share that to the BU that happened to, we share that across the company because it's important for everyone to understand why it happened, what happened, and how to fix it. So we're all learning together as a company. And I think that's really valuable, again, to everyone. There's so many problems that can come from crossing the border, and it can affect not just one BU, but the entire company as a whole.
Yeah, that was thank you for that very transparent answer. But that was handled really well. And I like that there's ownership on all parts, because I think sometimes when the ticket happens, we know who the finger's getting pointed at, and it kind of ends there. But that's a really good opportunity just for our listeners to learn about what Best in Class does when something like that does happen. So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. So Nicole, we asked Jake more of the negatives, and now we're going to let you speak more to what started off as a positive. So can you share a most recent experience, a most recent change your company has made to support compliance and safety for those driving light duty commercial vehicles?
Well, I think as far as changes goes, most of our systems have been in place for a little bit, but we actually outfitted all of our entire fleet, even our non-regulated light duty units, so pickups that aren't even over 4,500. They're all with the same telematics system. We do the same trip inspections on all of them. The trip inspections, because we don't really have a centralized vehicle maintenance department, that is our way of having our drivers let us know what's going on with their vehicles, whether it's a light duty, whether it's a light duty regulated NSC vehicle or a heavy duty vehicle. We get the emails as soon as a defect is recorded. On Tuesdays currently, we actually have a report that goes out to all of management with documenting any defects that have been received on the units for the previous week, and we follow up on that. So one of the things that we did see earlier this year, we had a flurry of activity of CVSA inspections happening with units being pulled over. And one of the trucks that was pulled over, we had the officer mention the crack that was in the windshield, and that the windshield needed to be replaced. So that was communicated out to all of the drivers and all of management that if you see a crack and it is end to end, it does impact the structural integrity of the window. So you do need to, if it's cracked end to end, don't just leave it to be replaced for the CVIP, right? Whether that's coming up or not. So we did see a flurry of activity come through on defects coming in over the next couple of days, as well as repair invoices coming in or window replacements. For all of a sudden, it just kind of shined a spotlight on how quickly our frontline drivers are able to respond to new direction. So start checking your windows. If you have a crack and it is end to end, you need to report it. We need to look into it. And it did definitely show up. It was a tangible result from that, which is a great test of the system to see, are people actually listening? Are they doing what we need them to do? Are they following up? Are the repairs being done? So
Really well said. And I applaud you, but also applaud your organization for that investment. And that's probably one of the best cases I've heard of an organization implementing technology and using it and seeing a good win like really quickly. Because when you go back to the good old paperwork, how hard is it to track and how long does it take to track the cracked windshields? Does it actually get reported? Does it actually get fixed versus no, all eyes on, or yeah, eyes on it, all hands on deck. Let's get this solved. So really good job. Great job to your team for really embracing that too. I appreciate that. All right, Kelsey, I think I've done enough talking for today. So
no, thank you for doing all that talking, Josh. I do want to thank you, Josh, Nicole, Jake, and Cliff for your time today. We always do appreciate the knowledge of all of our guests, and today was certainly no exception. I am going to wrap with one final skill testing question. Cliff, is there anything you would like to add?
Well, don't think so. It's other than just want to thank you for allowing me to come out and celebrate this program, and Dave Beatty and Edmonton City Police that really spearheaded this. It's without them, we wouldn't be having this. So
awesome. Thank you, Cliff. Mr. House, anything you would like to add?
I think we touched on it before, but it's funny, Nicole brought it up. I always think back to a quote, be curious, not judgmental. And I always think of that every single day. Understand your people, meet them. What do they like to do? Where the gaps are? When something happens, understand what happened and how to move forward. I think that is so, so valuable. Again, goes back to developing those relationships and those partnerships. Show you care to the people you work with. Those are the people that are paying you at the end of the day. The on the ground people, meet them. Maybe one day just go put your book away or your binder away or whatever it is. If you're an auditor like me, go put your boots on, go put your PPE on and learn about what they do. And that shows a lot. And it goes a long way when it comes to these audits and when you need something, when the enforcement side of me comes out, it's really going to help because it has to go both ways. You're a team at the end of the day. It shouldn't just be a demand from one side. And again, like Cliff said, I want to thank you guys for the opportunity to do this. If there's any questions that come about from this, feel free to reach out to me. Again, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jake. We will make sure we have your info in the show notes as well. And you hit on something really important there. I usually am behind a desk, and I think it's so important for all of us out there. Take a field trip, you guys. See what everyone else is up to. I think it's huge when you kind of put yourself in someone else's shoes or behind someone else's steering wheel, just to see whatever. It just helps you understand industry more. So I think that's a really important point, Jake. Now, the lady with the coolest last name in industry, Nicole Carrier. Is there anything you would like to add?
I think just touching on what Jake said again, definitely communication, getting out there and talking to people. I have the luxury working with the co-op right now. I have buy-in from the drivers. I have buy-in from management, and that's huge. It makes my job that much more enjoyable. I've worked with companies where maybe I didn't have the same buy-in, but one thing that has remained consistent through all of the different companies, I can tell you, it takes a lot of work to run a compliance department this way, where you care about people. You are personally invested in people. You're personally invested in how things are done. You're personally invested on how people are treated. It takes a lot more work to run it that way instead of distancing yourself. And it comes through. It's very easy to see when Jake is talking. You know what, if I'm going to phone him on something, I'm going to get the feeling he actually cares what I'm saying. And that's very much, people understand sincerity. And that is one thing that I tell my drivers, I don't do subtle or insincere well. So it is one of those things that people, when I speak to our folks when they first start, I tell them I get to talk to you on some of the best days of your life, starting your brand new job. And if there's an incident, I may talk to you on some of the worst days of your life. But either way, we'll get through it together, and just making sure that your number one job is to get home safe. We spend more time here than we do with our friends and family. So while we're here, let's do it safely, but let's also maybe try and make it an environment that we can all enjoy. And like Jake said, if anyone wants to reach out, I'm more than happy to share my information as well, because some of the information over the years, 20 years ago when I first started this, it was really challenging to find the answers to some of these questions, because when you're talking about laws, there's some companies that don't want to talk about it at all. So I genuinely appreciate the opportunities that people have nowadays and the training that AMTA and offers for learning some of those things. It's a lot less stressful for people getting into the industry to know what they're getting into.
Awesome. Some sage words from both of you. You were a little nervous, but I might make you guys come back. So you earned that one. And shout out to Nicole as well. You'll see her always at driver appreciation events, and Co-op brings the big bags of chips. So just put that little
We're
tidbit
doing
in there.
candy this year.
Hey,
We're doing
even
candy
better.
This year.
Love
Yeah.
it. And Josh, I know you did a lot of talking, but I'm going to give you one final opportunity. Anything you would like to add?
First off, I just want to say thank you. I like to express my gratitude for opportunities like this because it's special. And I know I've shared this to both with Jake, Nicole, and anyone else I've ever had the opportunity to podcast with, is it's a gift. It's a gift to share your truth and to talk about things that you really care about. And Kelsey, you do a really good job. So thank you for that. Honestly, my biggest encouragement to those listening is just to get involved. So everyone has budget, everyone has capacity in some way, shape, or form, and whatever yours is where you can get involved. So if it's free only, awesome. AMTA has so many things that you can just attend. If it's conference, which I highly recommend, and I don't know if this is pre or post conference. Post conference, okay. So when you listen to this, conference was amazing. I hope you have FOMO. No, I'm just kidding. But just get involved. Honestly, it's changed my life, 1,000%. And Cliff, I give you a lot of praise for that because you really encouraged me to get involved, and you spoke to things that you saw in me that I didn't see in myself at the time. That I'm now very fortunate that I can do in others. So thank you again for your influence. But no, this was great. I appreciate being on today.
Fantastic. And one final thank you guys for all of your knowledge, insight, etc. to Jake, Nicole, Cliff, and Josh. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's close with some news. AMTA's 88th annual conference at Grey Eagle Resort and Casino in Calgary has concluded. And oh my gosh, thank you all so much for coming. What a terrific 2 days we had. We really appreciate it and look forward to seeing you next year in Edmonton at River Cree for our 89th. As well, coming up on May 14th, we have our Medicine Hat Safety Summit. We'll be covering topics from mental health, driver fatigue, and guests including Trucking HR Canada. This is one day. It's $30. You get breakfast and lunch and a ton of awesome information, so we hope to see you there. And finally, the 76th Professional Truck Driving Championship takes place May 30th at our EIA location. Registration for drivers and volunteers is now open, and you can find that at amta.ca. Do you have any questions or comments about Steering Change episodes? Please do reach out on our Instagram at AMTA_CA or LinkedIn and Facebook at Alberta Motor Transport Association. Stay safe and see you next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of AMTA's Steering Change podcast. The views expressed by guests of the Steering Change podcast are their own and may not reflect the views of AMTA, its hosts, or sponsors. Did you have a question that you would like answered on an upcoming episode of the Steering Change podcast? We want to hear from you. To submit a question to the Steering Change mailbag, hit up our DMs on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram with the hashtag Steering Change, and your question will be answered either live on the podcast or by one of our SMEs here at AMTA. We ask that you share this episode with those in your network that could benefit from what we discussed today, and make sure to subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast platform so you can be notified when future episodes are released. You can learn more about us and our mission by visiting www.amta.ca. Now get out there and have a safe day.